Before you begin your day, pause for a moment. Do not rush into the outside world just yet. Do not reach for your phone. Do not replay what happened yesterday. Do not fill your mind with everything that might go wrong today. Right now, in this quiet space, you are standing at the creative center of your experience. This may seem like an ordinary morning, but it is far more important than you realize. Because what you accept as true in these first few minutes can influence how you experience every hour that comes after. You are here for a reason. You were meant to hear these words because today does not have to feel like every other day. Today can move differently. Today can shift in your favor. Today can show you just how much power you have over the way you experience your life, and it begins inside you. The world around you is not the starting point. It is the result. The starting point is your state of being, your assumptions, your inner dialogue, and the quiet beliefs you carry with you as you wake. So before you enter the outer world, choose your position. Choose to believe that things are coming together for you. Choose to feel that life is arranging opportunities in ways you may not yet see. Choose to know that what you truly desire is possible and that you do not have to force every detail into place. You are not waking up today to chase every outcome. You are waking up to allow the right things to unfold. Take a slow, deep breath, or let your body relax, let your mind become still, and step into this day as the person who expects things to work out. Stay with me, because the next few moments can completely change the way you enter today. The moment you wake each morning, you are not simply opening your eyes to another 24 hours. You are entering a fresh space where your inner state can influence the way you meet everything that follows. Before one word is spoken, before one task is completed, before the outside world begins asking things from you, something powerful is already active. Your consciousness, your emotional state, your first thoughts, your first expectations. That first inner movement can become the quiet foundation beneath your entire day. Most people wake up without noticing what they are doing internally. They grab their phone, they check messages, they remember yesterday's problems. They start thinking about today's responsibilities. They imagine difficult conversations before those conversations even happen. Without realizing it, they have already selected the emotional state from which they will experience the day. They expect stress, so everything feels like pressure. They expect delays, so every interruption feels like an obstacle. They expect difficulty, so even simple tasks can feel exhausting. Then they believe they are simply reacting to life. But pause and look deeper. Your experience is also shaped by the state you carry into each moment. The morning matters because it is a quiet and sensitive time. You have not yet been pulled into every demand, every notification, every opinion, and every distraction. In that space between sleep and full awareness, you have an opportunity to choose differently. What you repeatedly feel and expect can become familiar to your mind. And what becomes familiar begins to influence what you notice, what you focus on, how you respond, and what possibilities you recognize. Your day does not truly begin when you walk outside your door. It begins with the inner atmosphere you accept as normal. If you wake and deliberately feel grateful, even before you have a specific reason in front of you, you begin looking for things that support that feeling. If you wake with calm confidence, challenges may still appear, but you are less likely to meet them from panic. If you rise with the quiet assumption that something good can happen today, you become more aware of opportunities that you might otherwise overlook. It is not about pretending that every problem has disappeared. It is about choosing the state from which you will face whatever comes. That is where the shift begins. And once you understand this, you realize that your morning is not something to rush through. It is a moment to establish your direction. Think about how different your entire day can feel when you wake up excited compared with waking up irritated. The schedule may be identical, the same responsibilities may be waiting, the same people may cross your path, the same work may need to be completed. Yet your experience can feel completely different because you are meeting the same world from a different inner position. Your state changes the way you see the situation. Your expectations influence what you notice. Your emotional tone affects how you speak, how you listen, how quickly you recover, and how confidently you move. This is why the first moments of the morning deserve your attention. You do not need a perfect life to begin feeling better. You do not need every problem solved before you can choose peace. You do not need evidence for every positive possibility before allowing yourself to expect something good. Begin with the inner decision. Begin with the feeling that you are safe enough to breathe, strong enough to handle today, and open enough to receive what is meant for you. Then let the day reveal itself. Maybe something unexpected happens. Maybe a conversation goes better than you imagined. Maybe an opportunity appears. Maybe a problem becomes easier than expected. Maybe nothing dramatic happens at all, yet you move through ordinary moments with a completely different sense of ease. That matters too. Sometimes the greatest change is not what happens around you. It is the person you become while moving through what happens. So before you let the world tell you how to feel today, decide how you want to meet the world. Before you read the first message, before you hear the first opinion, before yesterday's memories return, give yourself a few quiet moments, breathe, become still, and remind yourself that you are not required to carry yesterday into today. Yesterday has already happened. Today is new. You can enter it with a new expectation, a clearer mind, and a calmer heart. Let that be your first decision. Everything does not need to be figured out right now. You only need to choose the state you want to carry into the next moment. Then choose it again and again. That is how a different day begins. Why? Because the inner state changed. The cause began within, and the effect eventually appeared outside. This is how the principle works. It does not choose between a positive state and a negative one. It simply reflects the state you repeatedly occupy. That is why the first 5 minutes after waking can matter more than the next 5 hours. In those opening moments, you are quietly deciding who you will be for the day. Will you be the person who expects struggle or the person who expects progress? Will you be the one who constantly reacts or the one who calmly directs your attention? Will you assume setbacks are waiting for you, or will you expect the day to move with greater ease? You do not transform your experience by changing every circumstance first. You begin by changing the inner state from which you face those circumstances. So instead of waking and asking, what could go wrong today? Ask yourself, what good things could already be making their way toward me? Instead of carrying yesterday's disappointments into the morning, imagine the quiet satisfaction you will feel tonight when you look back and realize that the day unfolded better than expected. Step into the version of yourself who reaches the end of this day feeling fulfilled, productive, peaceful, and grateful. Feel that state now. Experience it before you have evidence. This is not about pretending that everything is perfect. It is about choosing the direction of your mind. When you intentionally begin your morning with assurance, you are setting a clear inner expectation for how you want to experience what comes next. You are making a silent statement, this is the reality I am willing to live from. And your behavior begins to follow that decision. You may still meet challenges. You may still face delays, difficult conversations, or unexpected problems. But notice how different those things feel when you meet them from stability instead of fear. You started from confidence rather than doubt. Your state changes your perception, and your perception influences your experience. Stay with this idea because this small morning shift can change far more than you think. Many people believe that a productive day automatically creates a successful day. But often productive action becomes easier when your inner state is clear. When your mind is settled, you make decisions faster. When you feel confident, conversations become more natural. When you are calm, ideas have room to appear. When you are focused, opportunities become easier to recognize. The workload may be exactly the same, yet your experience of it can be completely different. The real difference is your inner posture. Imagine waking tomorrow and refusing to begin the day by feeding a single negative expectation. Imagine deciding before your feet even touch the floor that today can support you. Feel the calm strength of that choice. Carry it into the shower. Carry it while eating breakfast. Carry it into your commute and into your first conversation. Notice what happens to your body. Your shoulders relax, your breathing becomes deeper, your voice becomes steadier. You stop rushing to defend yourself or prepare for problems that have not happened. Your responses become thoughtful instead of automatic. This is how a different day begins. Not through force, through assumption. Your first morning state is like tuning an instrument before the music begins. When the instrument is tuned well, each note has greater harmony. When it is out of balance, even simple notes can sound strained. You are the instrument, and your daily experience is the music created through your thoughts, emotions, choices, and reactions. So do not underestimate this simple practice. It does not require money. It does not require perfect circumstances. It does not require the entire world to change first. It only requires awareness. Wake gently. Take a deep breath. Become aware of the first feeling you are accepting. Then choose it deliberately. Because before the world speaks to you, you are already speaking to the world through the state you carry. And that quiet declaration can influence how you move through everything that follows. Most people wait for evidence before they give themselves permission to believe. They say, when I see it, then I will trust it. When it happens, then I will feel safe. When it arrives, then I will finally become confident. But if you live this way, fulfillment always stays one step ahead of you. You keep waiting for life to give you permission to feel the way you want to feel. The deeper principle works in the opposite direction. You do not always believe because you see. Very often you begin to see differently because you believe differently. Assumption comes before confirmation. The outside world is not a courtroom where you must collect enough evidence before deciding what is possible. It is more like a mirror. A mirror does not choose what to reflect. It simply returns what is placed before it. If you repeatedly approach life with doubt, you may naturally notice situations that reinforce that doubt. If you approach life with quiet confidence, you become more likely to recognize evidence that supports that confidence. The world does not have to create your belief first. Your belief influences what you notice, how you respond, and what possibilities you allow yourself to see. This is why constantly waiting for proof can become a hidden form of delay. When you insist on visible confirmation before assuming success, you keep yourself mentally positioned outside the experience you want. You are saying, I will believe it later, and later can continue moving further away. The important point is that assumption is not blind positivity. It is an inner choice. It means deciding to occupy the emotional position of your desired outcome before your senses have completely caught up. It means saying, I can move through today with the expectation that things can work out, even when you do not yet know exactly how. At first, this may feel unfamiliar. That is normal. You are practicing a new mental direction, and the more consistently you practice it, the more natural it can become. Think about how easily fear operates. Someone imagines something going wrong, and almost instantly anxiety begins to rise. There may be no actual evidence that the feared event will happen, yet the body responds as though it is already real. The heart changes, the muscles tighten, the mind starts preparing, the imagined possibility creates a real emotional reaction. If an assumption can create fear without physical evidence, then a chosen assumption can also create calm, courage, and confidence before evidence appears. The basic mechanism is similar, only the direction changes. When you begin assuming success, something can shift inside you immediately. Your posture becomes stronger, your voice becomes calmer, your decisions become clearer, you stop looking for reasons to retreat, you begin moving with greater purpose, and because you move differently, people can respond to you differently. Opportunities can become easier to notice. Conversations can take a different direction. Choices that once felt confusing can become simpler. The evidence often becomes visible after the internal shift, not before it. This is the part many people miss. They look at a temporary situation and treat it like a final verdict. A delay becomes failure. A closed door becomes rejection. A mistake becomes proof that they are incapable. But a moment is not always a conclusion. Often, it is simply information. If you hold the assumption that your life can still move in your favor, a delay can become preparation. A closed door can become redirection. A mistake can become refinement. What looked like an ending can become the beginning of a better route. And once you understand this, you stop allowing one difficult moment to define the entire story. You breathe, you reset, You return to your chosen state. That is where your power begins again. The event may remain the same, but the meaning you give it can completely change. Assumption becomes powerful because it brings steadiness to your inner world. And when your inner world becomes calmer and more stable, your outer experience can begin to change with it. It may not happen in one instant, but consistent inner change can eventually produce visible differences. Think about a seed placed beneath the earth. For a while, nothing seems to be happening. You cannot see the roots developing, yet something is taking place beneath the surface. Your chosen assumption can work in much the same way. It begins quietly before you see evidence. Impatience pulls the seed out too early. Persistence gives it time to grow. To assume does not mean to fool yourself. It means to inwardly accept what you desire as a possible and meaningful reality, and then begin feeling the relief, confidence, peace, or gratitude connected with it now. You speak to yourself from the result rather than constantly speaking about what is missing. You allow your inner state to become familiar, and as you remain consistent with that state, your choices, reactions, attention, and behavior begin moving in the same direction. Think about moments when you were almost certain something would work out. Maybe you entered an important opportunity expecting a positive result. You did not have the final answer yet, but something inside you felt different. That expectation affected the way you carried yourself. You spoke with more confidence. You noticed possibilities. You made decisions with less hesitation. Your inner conviction influenced your actions, and the result often followed. Now imagine doing this intentionally. Imagine waking every morning with the quiet assumption that today can support you. Assume your conversations can unfold with understanding. Assume useful answers can appear when you need them. Assume you can be supported in ways you cannot predict yet. Feel that steadiness before the outside world gives you a reason to feel it. Your mind may resist at first. It may ask for proof. It may remind you of old disappointments. It may say, but what if it happens again? Let those thoughts pass without giving them control. Your past does not have to become your permanent expectation. You are allowed to choose a new response today. This is an important shift, so stay with it. Assumption is an act of inner authority. It means choosing to participate in your experience instead of allowing every outside event to decide your emotional state. You choose the story you are carrying before the next chapter appears. And when you remain faithful to that healthier story, your experience can begin to reflect it through new choices, new reactions, new opportunities, and new ways of seeing. So stop demanding that the world prove everything to you first. Instead, practice proving to yourself that you can remain grounded in a chosen state even when appearances are temporary or unclear. Accept inwardly what you want to experience. Stand in that acceptance with patience. You do not need to force it. You do not need to check every hour for evidence. Keep returning to the state you have chosen, because the assumption you repeatedly strengthen becomes the lens through which you experience life. And that is where change begins. There is a powerful difference between hoping for something and living as though it is already becoming part of your identity. Hope can place your desires somewhere in the future. Living from the end brings your attention back to the feeling of completion now. Most people spend their days wanting, wishing, checking, and waiting. They think about what they desire as something outside themselves, something that may appear someday if enough circumstances happen to line up. But your creative strength begins to change when you stop constantly focusing on the distance and start practicing the state of the person who has already reached the desired outcome. Living from the end means allowing yourself to experience the feeling of fulfillment before the physical result arrives. It means you stop asking every minute, how will this happen? And begin settling into a calmer thought. I can move forward with the belief that this is possible for me. You shift from constantly trying to become someone different into practicing the qualities of the person you want to be. Imagine that you want greater success in your work. The usual response may be to work harder while carrying fear. You push yourself, you worry about results, you compare yourself with others, you measure every step against the possibility of failure. But living from the end creates a different inner posture. You begin practicing the calm satisfaction of someone who trusts their ability to succeed. Your decisions come from confidence instead of desperation. Your actions come from clarity instead of panic. You are not constantly chasing approval. You are building from a sense of self-respect and purpose. The outside world responds to what you do, but what you do is strongly influenced by the state from which you act. When that state changes, your thinking changes. Your language changes. Your interpretation of events changes. And when interpretation changes, experience can change with it. Living from the end is not about escaping reality or pretending that difficulties do not exist. It is about deliberately choosing the identity you want to strengthen. You are practicing the mindset of the version of yourself who has already moved beyond the old limitation. You are becoming familiar with the emotional tone of completion. If you want more peace in a relationship, do not make your entire sense of peace depend on another person changing first. Begin by practicing peace within yourself. Feel calm now, feel appreciation now, feel warmth now. Let those qualities influence how you communicate. When your inner atmosphere becomes less defensive, conversations can become softer, tension can decrease, understanding can become easier. Even when change takes time, your internal shift gives you a different place from which to respond. Much of frustration comes from living inside the feeling of not yet. People constantly look for signs. They measure every little movement. They question the timing. They wonder why nothing has changed yet. But living from the end reduces that anxious waiting because your attention is no longer trapped in the gap between where you are and where you want to be. You begin experiencing the qualities of the desired state now. Think about how your body responds when you imagine a problem getting worse compared with imagining that the same problem has already been resolved. When you picture the solution clearly, your breathing may become slower, your muscles may relax, your thoughts may become quieter. That response reminds you that your inner images can influence your physical state. When you repeatedly imagine completion, you can practice responding like someone who feels more secure and capable. And the key is consistency. It is easy to feel confident for 30 seconds. The real practice begins when circumstances challenge that confidence. Appearances can tempt you to return to the old story. But an appearance is not necessarily a final conclusion. It may simply be the result of what came before. If you continue choosing a healthier state, you give yourself the opportunity to create a different pattern. Living from the end also changes the way you approach obstacles. Instead of immediately treating every problem as proof that your goal is impossible, you can see it as information, a lesson, or simply another step that requires a response. You do not have to panic. You can pause. You can ask, what would the confident version of me do next? If you believe the destination is possible, then an unexpected step does not automatically mean you have failed. Sometimes the path changes without the purpose changing. This practice works best when imagination is connected with genuine feeling. At night, before you sleep, choose a short mental scene that represents what you would experience if your desire were already fulfilled. Do not make it complicated. Feel the relief, feel the gratitude, feel the quiet satisfaction. Let the scene become emotionally familiar. Then, when morning comes, carry that same sense of calm into your day. Walk with it, speak from it, make decisions from it. Over time, what once required effort can begin to feel natural. The distance between imagination and identity becomes smaller. Something that once felt like an exercise can start feeling like a normal way of thinking. Living from the end can reduce inner struggle because it removes the constant battle between desire and doubt. You are no longer saying, I want this, but I know it will never happen. You are practicing a more unified inner position. This matters to me, and I am willing to believe it can become possible. That acceptance brings stability. It can sharpen your perception, it can influence your actions, and when your actions change, your experiences can change as well. The world may not rearrange itself overnight, but your relationship with the world can begin changing immediately. If you constantly see yourself as incomplete, you may notice everything that confirms lack. If you begin seeing yourself as capable, worthy, and increasingly fulfilled, you become more aware of abundance, possibilities, and progress. Identity influences experience. So stop standing mentally at the starting point of your desire. Take a moment to imagine yourself beyond the old limitation. Feel the accomplishment. Feel the peace. Feel the quiet pride of knowing you kept going. Let that feeling guide your next decision. Because when you begin living from the outcome you want to embody, you stop spending every moment chasing a future version of yourself. You begin practicing that version now. And now is where your next choice is always made. What you call your current reality is not necessarily a permanent structure. It is not a final statement about who you are or what your future must become. Your present experience is influenced by patterns you have carried, beliefs you have repeated, fears you have entertained, expectations you have strengthened, and stories you have told yourself over time. Some of those patterns may have been useful once. Others may simply be old habits that no longer deserve control. The outside situation can look solid. It can feel convincing. It can even appear impossible to change. But your response to it is still available to you. Think of standing before a mirror. The reflection may show you exactly what is in front of it, but the mirror does not make the first move. You do. When you change your position, the reflection changes with you. In the same way, when you begin changing the inner position from which you live, your choices, attention, behavior, and experience can gradually begin to reflect that shift. So do not let the current picture convince you that the story is finished. It is simply the picture you are looking at right now. Your next inner decision has not yet been made, and that is where the possibility begins. The reflection in a mirror never begins the movement. It follows the movement. When you smile, the reflection smiles back. When you frown, it reflects the same expression. Now imagine forgetting this simple truth and trying to change the reflection itself. You would push against the glass. You would become frustrated. You might demand that the image become different without realizing that the source of the change is standing in front of the mirror. Life can be understood in a similar way. Your circumstances do not have to determine your inner state. They can reflect the state you repeatedly carry. Many people spend their lives reacting to shadows. They argue with what they see. They fight against appearances. They decide that certain conditions are permanent, unfair, or impossible to change. But the more attention they give to the reflection, the longer they remain connected to the state that helped create it. Reaction can become an unconscious attachment to the past. Every time you emotionally relive the same circumstance, you strengthen the story surrounding it. This is why understanding the relationship between inner state and outer experience can be so freeing. It reminds you that what appears in front of you does not have to become your identity. A circumstance may require your attention, but it does not have to define you. It is information, not a final sentence. It can show you something about the patterns you have been carrying without deciding who you must become next. If you have spent a long time expecting problems, you may naturally notice more delays, complications, or reasons for concern. If you have lived with deep self-doubt, you may find situations that seem to confirm those doubts. But this does not mean life is punishing you. These experiences can become mirrors that reveal what you have been expecting. And here is where your freedom begins. If an old pattern helped shape the way you experienced yesterday, a new pattern can influence the way you experience tomorrow. The outside world often moves more slowly than an inner decision. That delay can confuse people. They change their thinking for one morning, perhaps 2 days, and then expect everything outside them to instantly look different. When the old circumstances remain, they conclude that nothing worked. But an old reflection does not always disappear the instant you change direction. Sometimes the image remains for a while because it is connected to what came before. Think about turning away from a shadow. The shadow may seem to follow for a moment, but it changes when the light and your position change. Patience is therefore not weakness. It is the ability to remain steady while change is still becoming visible. When you choose confidence instead of fear, possibility instead of constant lack, peace instead of resentment, you are creating a different inner starting point. And when your starting point changes, your choices begin changing too. Your attention changes, your responses change, your behavior changes. Eventually, your experience can begin reflecting those changes. Stay with this, because this is where many people give up too early. When difficulty appears, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you can ask, "What state have I been practicing?" Ask the question without blaming yourself. This is not about shame, it is about awareness. Once you become aware of an old pattern, you can stop feeding it. You can gently withdraw your attention from the story that keeps repeating and begin investing your attention in a different way of being. If you are experiencing financial pressure, do not spend every waking moment mentally repeating the fear. Take the practical steps you need to take while also practicing an inner sense of stability, responsibility, and provision. If a relationship feels tense, do not spend hours replaying every painful conversation. Work toward healthy communication while cultivating the inner expectation of respect, clarity, and understanding. If you keep encountering obstacles, do not automatically assume that the entire path is against you. Pause. Recenter. Ask what the next constructive step is. Hold the assumption that progress is still possible. At first, the outer picture may look exactly the same. Do not let that discourage you. Beneath the surface, your relationship with the situation may already be changing. The old pattern can weaken as the new one becomes stronger. One of the biggest mistakes people make is turning temporary circumstances into permanent identities. One setback becomes, "This is my life." One rejection becomes, "This is who I am." One mistake becomes, "I always fail." But a moment is not an identity. Circumstances can change because your responses, decisions, beliefs, and expectations can change. You are not required to continue yesterday's emotional habits simply because they are familiar. The moment you consciously choose a different response, you interrupt the old cycle. You do not need to wrestle with the shadow. You do not have to spend all day explaining why it exists. You do not have to prove to anyone that it should disappear. Recognize it. Learn from it. Then turn your attention toward what you want to strengthen. Change the inner direction and allow the outer effects to catch up. This requires discipline with attention. What you repeatedly focus on becomes more emotionally familiar. If you constantly return to the old story, you keep giving that story energy. If you repeatedly focus on the qualities you want to embody, you strengthen a different pattern. Over time, your behavior begins to reflect it. Your decisions become different. Your standards become clearer. You notice opportunities you might have ignored before. You respond to resistance with more flexibility. What once felt completely fixed can begin to soften because you are no longer meeting it from the same place. And eventually you may recognize something deeply important. You are not necessarily trapped by the circumstance itself. You are trapped by the belief that the circumstance had the final word. A shadow can look enormous when you stare at it, but it has no substance of its own. Change the light, change your position, and the shadow changes. So change your state. Strengthen the assumption you want to live from. Stop giving endless attention to what no longer represents the person you are becoming. Circumstances are not your master. They are part of the picture. And as you change, the picture can change too. There's another way to move through life, one that replaces constant anxiety with steadiness and replaces the need to control every detail with quiet confidence. It begins with a simple assumption: things can work in your favor even when you do not yet understand how. Not only when everything looks perfect, not only when every plan goes exactly as expected, but even during moments that seem confusing. This single decision can change the way you interpret events, the way you respond to pressure, and the way you recognize possibilities. Most people divide life into two categories. Good things mean they are supported. Difficult things mean something has gone wrong. So when something pleasant happens, they feel safe. When something unexpected happens, they immediately feel threatened. Their emotional state rises and falls with every outside event. They are carried upward by favorable appearances and pulled downward by unfavorable ones. But what if you stopped assuming that every uncomfortable moment was automatically working against you? What if a delay could contain useful information? What if an unexpected change could redirect you towards something better suited to you? What if a closed door could prevent you from walking into a situation that would have cost you more later? When you assume that life can still work in your favor, you enter a different state. You begin trusting yourself to handle what comes next. An obstacle can become redirection. A delay can become preparation. A closed door can become protection. This does not mean ignoring pain or pretending disappointment feels good. It means refusing to give one difficult moment the power to define the entire meaning of your life. And this shift can be incredibly powerful. Look back at your own past. How many moments once felt like disasters but later made more sense? How many opportunities you missed eventually turned out not to be the right path? How many relationships ended and, with time, created space for